Hello shooters, Kevin Wyatt with Wyatt's Outdoor Incorporated. Today I'm going to do a little helpful hint video on feeding operations, specifically on magazine follower springs and also third round down versus 2 round down in your magazine box, and also buying rifles or building rifles. So first of all, let's talk about follower springs. Here I've got 2 follower springs. This spring is a factory length spring, factory height, and this one is an altered spring. So sometimes when we're building rifles, we find that a rifle has too much energy trying to drive the follower up to the top. So we want to reduce that. So the easiest way to reduce that is, you can see on this spring here compared to a factory spring, what I've done here is I've ground about 1/8 of an inch off each side of all 3 bends. What that does then is that takes the factory spring, which has approximately 6 pounds of pressure to fully compress, that reduces to about 3.5 pounds. So you lose 42% of the drive to the top. When you're putting like a mid-length magazine box in a short action rifle and you need to transfer that pressure farther to the rear, a lot of times a factory spring will have too much drive going up, so you want to relieve it. Here at Wyatt's Outdoor, when we make these magazine springs, we actually make them a little bit stiffer than factory Remington springs. We do that on purpose. That way if you need a rifle to have a lot of drive coming up, you have that option. And if you need to reduce that, then you can do this alteration and reduce it all in the same spring, rather than having to go and have 6 or 7 different springs to go through to try to find the right spring tension. It's very easy to alter these springs and get that lighter lift. The other thing that we'll do is, when you're building a rifle, a lot of times, especially on the extended boxes where you're moving everything to the rear, you tend to lose what we call the heel pressure on a cartridge. What the heel pressure is as you load the magazine box, say you've got 3 down the magazine box, you load the first one in the chamber, open the bolt, eject it out, go to run the next one in, and the back of the cartridge case is not coming up to be engaged by the nose of the bolt. So what's happening is that cartridge case is actually pivoting on generally up by the shoulder. So what that is you've lost heel pressure to the cartridge. So I'm going to show you how to overcome that. I have a Hawkins hinge floor plate here. I've got the bottom metal off of it, or the floor plate off of it. So if you were to take an extended box, put it in this Hawkins, and you look at it, along the front and the sides, the magazine box actually sits in the mortise cut that Andy's put in there. At the back, you'll notice the back of the magazine box has a square notch cut out. So what that does, that allows the back of the box to sit on top of the guard instead of down in the mortise. That keeps you from having to machine that mortise farther back. But what that also causes is, with the magazine box in place, if you look down inside, you'll see that there's a transition there because of the extended box. It creates a little shelf. So what we want to do is remove that shelf. So I'll set it up in a milling machine, or if you don't have a milling machine, you could do it with a Dremel tool or a die grinder. Just be careful when you do it. And because of the way that Andy has designed his latch spring assembly, you can do this very easy on one of his. On a PTG or a Remington, you can do it, but then you've got to alter where the latch spring sets. If you go to my site on the installation instructions and scroll down, I show that alteration. But once again, this is a Hawkins, so what we want to do is we want to change these, change the surface right here and create an angle. So I'll set it up in the milling machine and actually cut an angle about 25-30 degrees. What that allows is, when you load your cartridges in your magazine, the back of the cartridge comes down, hits that angle, and allows the cartridge to drive, and the follower to drive all the way to the bottom into your floor plate. Once it's allowed to drive all the way to the bottom, then generally you're going to get that 3rd round down. If you don't get the 3rd round down, then there's a good possibility that the pillar height on the stock is too short. So the whole stock, the dimensions are a little bit too short through the center. If that's the case, then your only alternative would be to go to like a PTG, what they call a canoe style floor plate. On the canoe style floor plate, the floor plate actually drops down about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch below the bottom line of the stock. So it allows you a little bit more room in there. Okay, so when we put this together, and now let's say we've got that altered and we've lost that heel pressure now because we've moved everything to the rear. So now I'm going to show you how to pick up that heel pressure. So once again with the Hawkins, Andy's made it pretty easy for us because when he made the mortise cut in this floor plate, he made that mortise cut farther back to the rear than what the Remington or PTG is. So when you install your follower spring in that floor plate, it has quite a bit of movement to be able to go fore and aft. So if I've lost the heel pressure in a rifle, in order to gain that back, what I do is, with it just like it is right here, out of the rifle, pick up the back of the spring and slide it back to the rear as far as it'll go. Okay? Once you've done that, then take a center punch, and up here on these little tabs that hold the spring in, just ahead of the spring, hit it with a center punch on each side. What that does, it allows that, or keeps that spring from being able to run forward. Now moving that spring to the rear, it allows you, you've moved it back probably about 1/8 of an inch, and what you've done there is you've transferred that heel pressure 1/8 of an inch farther to the rear. And generally that's going to cure any of that rocking motion that you get on a cartridge. Okay, the last thing is that I kind of wanted to address here is building rifles. I get a lot of calls from customers who are not gunsmiths and they want to build their first custom rifle. They're speccing it out themselves and they want to put this together and have it built or have it shoot as well as a rifle that's being built by a custom gunsmith. Unfortunately, this doesn't always work out like that. In fact, it rarely works out like that. You can buy a $1,600 action or a $2,000 action. You can buy a Krieger barrel. You can buy all the best components that are made and put it together, and the thing either won't shoot or it won't function. And the reason why is because these aren't an AR-15 Lego rifle. You're putting together a piece of equipment that needs to be put together correctly. That's why the custom gunsmiths stay in business, because they know how to put these things together. They know how to make them work. So if you've gone out and you've paid, $3,000 or $4,000 for all this equipment and you put it together and it doesn't work, that's probably the reason. So the best thing to do is go talk to a custom gunsmith, hire him to put it together, so when it's done, that it performs as it should and everything works like it should. You'll be a lot happier in the end. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call here at the shop pretty much any time. I know I'm only open 3 days a week. I'm usually in here working 7 days a week, but I'm always willing to help. All it is a phone call. My number is 541-776-8417. Kevin Wyatt, good shooting. Thank you.